Hello, my name is Jennifer Yates. I am an RN. I've been an RN for a little over 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was a patient care tech or CNA for 12 years. So I've been in the healthcare field for almost 16 years total. Worked many different areas. I've worked nursing home, long-term acute care, hospital, rehab, acute care setting now for past 6-7 years, and I also did home health for 1 year. So this assessment is over the Villa Health scenario and how the nurses had to adapt to change for electronic healthcare record change and their charting system from paper to electronic, and then how the leadership collaborated with them and with everyone else to get this transition completed. So back in 2019, when I first became a nurse and COVID was new, the entity that I worked for also had a switch in charting systems at that time, early March, I think it was, of 2019. So the organization as a whole had already implemented the charting system that we transitioned to, which was from Allscripts to Epic. In the bigger hospitals, and then even though we didn't know COVID was coming, we were already scheduled to get it rolling, and then they decided that they couldn't delay it any longer because there had already been a little bit of a pushback. So just like the nurses in the Villa Health scenario, some people were for it, some people were against it, and then ultimately we just had to go with it because that's what was coming in. Some nurses learned it fast, some nurses learned it slower, but at the end of the day, now we're all using it and we pretty much all love it. So, one thing that our leadership and management did, and I want to say it as an organization altogether, and even the educational department did, that was so helpful, was that they made us do computer modules and get us educated on just the basis of the Epic system. And then we had to attend classes. I think there was 2 classes, like both of them were almost 8-hour days, doing online training, and then we had to do a test out at the end. So that was, helpful just to learn the basis of like the basic flow sheet, where to find the vitals, the labs, and doctor's orders and all that. For like the first day that it was going to be rolled out on the floor. Another thing that they did was, because some of the hospital systems had already had it, so what they deemed like super users, people who learned it really well, within like the 6 months to a year, they brought them to our facility. So they were actually colleagues, but just at different entities, RNs and whomever, to help teach us, as well as had multiple, and I mean plenty of Epic trainers that Epic actually hires these people, trains them, and they go out and they instill it. When the hospitals roll out Epic, they help teach them. So that was really, really good thing that my entity did, and the organization as a whole. One thing that I can see in this scenario is that the administrator and the IT manager, they weren't as helpful to the nurses there at Villa Health like I was fortunate to have. So that's probably why they got some pushback. And also the IT guy that came, Josh, he wasn't very informative for the IT guy. What was his name again? I forgot. I wrote down here. I think his name was Chad. Yeah, Chad. To teach him and his guys that were actually going to be the ones taking care of the IT problems there at Villa Health. So there was a little downfall there in communication and collaboration with the corporate's lead IT guy as compared to the actual facilities IT guy. A little bit of like a background story. When first night Epic rolls out, I mean, I'm a GN, barely on my own. I think I started in September and this thing rolled out in March, so almost like 6 months. I get a fresh patient from PACU coming up, very nauseated. I mean, like throwing up, and she just doesn't feel well. I mean, she's so sick, so nauseated. And I go to give her Zofran, and this thing keeps flashing every time I scan the med. Oh, it's not time yet. So I'm like, okay. And at this time, I didn't know like how to message the doctor. We used to call this number, and then they would get back with us, and they're like, no, you don't do that anymore. You message them. So I called my charge nurse. She helped me a little bit, but then she couldn't get it either that day. So we ended up using one of the Epic trainers. They came. And the deal is that because there was a PACU order, they gave Zofran and PACU. Well, I had a floor order and I needed to give Zofran. They're like, just message your doctor to make sure it's okay. But anytime you have that, even if they gave the med in PACU, even though it's a PACU order and you have a order for the floor, it's going to automatically populate saying it's not time because the med was just given and, the order says within 4 hours. And unfortunately, the patient already had the med within the 4 hours. So I messaged the doctor. They said, okay, no problem. You can go ahead and give it. So I did. But as a new nurse, and then my patient's not feeling well, and the family was just like kind of staring, I was like, okay, like, what am I supposed to do here? But we got it figured out. We got that patient settled, and she was able to rest and feel better and go from there. And we worked out that little glitch. So going to my references, I actually found a website, reading through and searching, that talks about 8-step plan to implement electronic health record concept, and they talk about how having team building and evaluating and making sure that you choose the right vendor and selecting appropriate people to come into the facilities. So selecting those appropriate super users, selecting those appropriate trainers and staff that work for Epic. I can't tell you how helpful they were. Not only because they were coming in to teach us, but I mean, this is dead center of COVID, where everybody's getting ramped up and, it's just hitting so fast and so hard, and we don't know what's coming or going. So that was really nice. The management team there, I mean, the CEO at the entity at that time, he was just amazing, very caring, very passionate about what we as nurses have to say on the floor, and he would take it in, and he would either from our immediate leadership, or he would actually talk with us and have town home meetings or whatever they call them. I think that's what they call them, and just hear us and make changes accordingly. So that's really helpful to work at a facility that you have a lead management or lead leadership do that. Another thing was I found an article written by Holschinder, Park, and Jesus, and they talk about how if you educate before you roll out or implement any change, then there's not as much pushback and there's not as much negative by the workforce. So they say that if you can interprofessionally educate and collaborate a practice, then mitigating challenges and changes faced by the healthcare system world is more rewarding than just rolling it out and not having any previous knowledge or just a base guideline. So I was thankful that we did have that. Unfortunately, the Villa Health Group, it didn't seem like they had any prior education, just some discussion, but no actual modules and test outs and anything prior to that. So that was, I'm sure, tough for them. And then one other reference that I found talks about communication dilemmas and addressing them. So just in any field, but especially in healthcare, If we can't collaborate as floor workers, floor nurses, PCTs, EVS, to our leadership, and then our leadership go talk to management, then you're going to have some turmoil, because and vice versa. If management can't talk to like floor leadership, and then floor leadership talk to the floor workers, and like find a middle ground and try to work with one another, then it's never gonna work. So you have to have that, and you have to be willing on all sides to take on change, have that effective communication, compassion, and organization within an entity or within an organization for it to be successful. So education, communication, and just having a strong leadership team, as well as nurses who are, or healthcare team members who are willing to put in the work and make a safe and effective place for patients and for an organization to run, is going to be key in having a strong business. Thank you.